Jeff, I'm hearing, I think you say that if you were to blue sky this, governments around the world can play a very direct and productive role in remedying this situation. There are steps that governments can take, not necessarily central banks, but the governments could take in theory to turn this around, or to salvage the current monetary system, or to repurpose it in a productive way. But because you don't think that governments either have the understanding or the resolve, or just there's too much gridlock, or for whatever reason, you have very little hope that governments will take those steps, which is why you're saying that sort of the last hope are these digital currencies, right? Preferably the governments around the world would wake up, take notice, gain an understanding of what needs to be done, and then take steps to do it. Because you don't think that that's possible, the digital currency direction is sort of our last hope. But I want to pull on the idea that there are things that governments around the world might be able to do to salvage the situation without having to move to a completely new currency regime, a new world order. And are some of those potential tools and policies captured in what I might, in a hand-wavy way, call modern monetary theory, and some of the sort of soft policies that are implied by some of the big exponents of MMT?
Personally, no. I mean, MMT has been tried in Japan, and they didn't call it MMT, and it didn't lead to any of the particular outcomes that they were looking for. I know MMT proponents are going to say, no, they didn't really try MMT. Like communism, it's never really been tried. Well, yeah, it kind of has. The idea that you can essentially use the labor force as sort of an inflationary, deflationary moderator by having the ability to print money and pay workers to not work is kind of what the Japanese did for a while there. And they even did what was called money finance fiscal expansion, which is kind of a big part of MMT too. I know MMT proponents are going to look at this and say, "Oh, this is ridiculous. That's not what MMT is." But yeah, it actually is. So I don't think MMT is a solution, and I don't think it's being offered as a solution to the Eurodollar problem, because despite what the term implies, there's no money in MMT, and they don't really understand the monetary system either. So they're just as in the dark as everybody else is. And it's really more of a political thing than an economic or monetary thing.
One of the tenets of MMT, to my understanding anyways, is to employ the governance of the U.S. government and the Treasury, I guess other governments as well, to direct the price of money in the banking system for different types of channels. So, for example, if there's a perception that the housing market is overheated because the cost of capital for mortgages is too low, then they would raise the reserve requirements on mortgage issuance, for example. But maybe at the same time, they're trying to encourage lending to the energy sector. And so they're going to reduce reserve limits or otherwise incentivize private banks to lend to the sectors that need to expand supply to meet too much demand, right? So there's a lot more, I think, to MMT than just trying to control inflation and demand through the employment channel, right? So I guess I only say that because are some of these types of tools those which you might recommend are available to governments and that might be used productively by governments to help us get out of this type of situation?
The short answer is no. I mean, you can look MNT. Yes, there's a part of that which is, hey, let's do resource allocation. Let's do resource allocation in a top-down central planning type way, because that seems to be appealing to a certain type of people who want to believe in a technocracy. Again, this is more political than it is economic. And I think we've seen the answer to that, which is something like ESG. ESG is falling apart because all Wall Street did was slap ESG labels on everything and call it credit allocation according to this governance issue. And I don't see how you overcome that, because as long as you have a private system, and this is true of reserve requirements or any other type of regulation, Emil and I talk about this all the time. As soon as a government creates a regulation, any big institution, any big player is going to already immediately hire an army of accountants and lawyers, mathematicians, and lobbyists to find their way around the regulation. As long as they feel that there's a profit motive to do so, they're going to do it. So if you're suggesting that we eliminate profit motives entirely, eliminating the private system entirely, which some MMT proponents do, then that's a different ballgame. I don't think you're going to see MMT light slapped in some place or another, and that's going to solve our monetary problems, because again, it's a misconception that this isn't really about money for MMT. It isn't anything other than some soft socialistic type tendency. It doesn't solve the existing problem because it doesn't even recognize the existing problem, because the answer is not to have a jobs bank or to more efficiently allocate credit using a top-down centralized structure. That's not the problem here. So we're not even solving the problem as it actually is, which goes back to what I said before. Step one here in getting out of this mess is recognizing what's actually wrong.